Hi, Atulji from PluginIndia, and we are here in Mumbai in the office of PMV, which stands for Personal Mobility Vehicle, and with us we have a co-founder, Kalpit Patel ji, and Kalpit ji, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
And Kalpit ji, let's start by hearing a little bit about your background. So you made this very bold step into personal mobility four-wheelers, and let's try to understand the story from the start. So what's your background like? Well, no.
So actually I am an engineer by qualification, and post that I've done my MBA and I was working with a bank.
Acha.
So I think Three Idiots may you would have heard. So something like that is what my story is. But then uske baad Rancho aaya and he was like, kuch excellence wala kaam karna chahiye. So
And who is Rancho? You or someone else?
So let that question be unanswered.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, jokes apart, see the idea was always, I mean, it has always been, even when I was working in the city, the idea was always to add value and contribute in a way, you know, where there is a sizable output from a small input. So here also the idea, when I first started off back in 2016,
Okay.
the idea was not to build a business. The idea was to have a sustainable alternative which is right-sized mobility for the everyday use case, purpose built for the everyday use case. So when I started back in 2016, I had no idea that there is actually going to be a business, which is why we actually formalized the company only after making 3 prototypes and about 2.5 years of work. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how we started.
Great. So 2016 is, like you said, then you kind of started off.
First thought of the idea of the right side.
Right. So you quit your Citibank job in 16, or you waited for some more time?
So actually, I quit City about in 2015.
Acha.
And after that, I was working for a small company which was into imports of building material products.
Okay.
And that is when, you know, I basically started to learn. So the idea is very simple. I mean, I used to travel from Borivali to Borega, which is a distance of about 10 kilometers.
Right.
And it used to take me about 60 minutes.
By car?
By car.
Okay.
And I was a solo driver most of the time, because obviously you're going to an office, which is how it is the case for everybody.
Right.
Almost everybody, right?
Okay.
So that is how it started. That this is not the right way to travel every day. I mean, you can't spend 60 minutes just reaching your office.
Sure. Sure.
So that is how the idea started. Originally, I was just thinking that let's see what we can build.
Right.
So that way we started. We made one prototype. We made the second one. We made the third one. And that
So
is when
the first prototype, was it four-wheeled or?
No. So actually, when we first started building this, four-wheelers in this small car category was not allowed as per Indian regulations.
Okay.
So we had to necessarily look at a three-wheel option.
Right.
And it was a reverse strike.
So third, it was a reverse strike.
It was a reverse strike. So
Okay.
2 wheels up front and 1 wheel in the
Okay.
back. And yeah, so that is how it was.
So
Four-wheeler.
how did the fourth wheel get added?
So the fourth wheel got added all thanks to Bajaj.
Okay.
As I would admit.
Thanks, Rajiv.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bajaj, for actually pushing and getting the regulation approved from the government side for the quadricycle category. So when that happened, we thought that, you know, Indian consumers are used to seeing the fourth wheel on their vehicles. So let's not deprive them of the fourth wheel, and that's when we added the fourth wheel. The design at that time was vastly different than what it looks like now. Obviously, we had like multiple iterations of the same. And from what feedback that we have got on the design, I think we have done few things very well in terms of the design.
Like what?
Yeah. So one of the things that we got feedback from the consumers when we were speaking to them is that whatever that you design cannot be funny looking, cannot be something that's sci-fi, cannot be something that is really standing out. I mean, you want to stand out, but you don't want to stand out in a very odd way, right?
Right.
So our objective when we first put pen to paper was that it has to look contemporary, it has to look a regular vehicle, it has to be see, the concept itself is new, right? Two-seater, especially one behind the other. So we don't want to put off the customers by giving a very quirky kind of a design or doing some weird thing on the vehicle. Sure. So it was always driven with a clear-cut mindset that the design has to be subtle, it has to be strong, but it still has to be subtle. It cannot be something weird, basically.
Right.
So not be weird was our directive, as funny as it may sound, but yeah, that was what it was.
So the thing in traffic is that, you know, the narrower your vehicle, the easier it is to weave through. So the width has been kept at a very, very kind of comfortable 1 meter. But with a 1 meter width, you cannot have two passengers sitting next to each other. So what happens in the PMV is you have the front driver sitting alone, and you got an occupant behind, which I can kind of think you can see two people, but I think you might just kind of legally make it permissible for one. Is that right?
Correct, yes. So I mean, we'll see if we can squeeze in two people in terms of the legality. We will try to do that.
Right.
But comfortable seating, I guess one adult and a child would be more likely.
Okay. Kalpit, tell me, what's the difference between a quadricycle versus a car? You know, so for the layman who doesn't understand the semantics of this thing, can you just take us through a minute about what's the essential difference between the two?
Right. So there are like every vehicle that has to be driven on road has to have a type approval, and as per CMVR we have to classify every vehicle in one or the other classes. The regular cars that you see on the road are called M1 technically.
Okay.
The one version lower and which is particularly built for the everyday use case, which is the intra-city vehicle, is called the L7. So this vehicle, the Easy, is going to be in the L7 category. There are some weight restrictions, and there are some speed restrictions, and there are some power restrictions on the vehicle. So a quadricycle cannot exceed in terms of the overall weight of the vehicle more than 450 kgs without the battery packs. It cannot travel more than 70 kilometers per hour as per regulation, and it cannot have a motor which is powered more than 15 kilowatts. So these are the three restrictions which are there in classifying the vehicle as L7. If you breach any of these, then the vehicle has to be classified as the M1 category of vehicle.
Now, one of the apprehensions that people have about the quadricycle is safety. And we'd like to know what kind of work have you done which is related to safety? How does your PMV become a safer car given that it's a quadricycle?
So our objective is like I was saying earlier, that the vehicle has to be contemporary. So in that aspect, given that it's a smaller vehicle and lighter vehicle, what we are going to do is obviously have the regular features, which is the seat belts and all that. We will also have passive safety, where there is a decent enough crumple zone at the front, which allows for the vehicle to have some space in case of an impact. Although the vehicle is low speed vehicle, so from that perspective, there is definitely going to be that much benefit for the vehicle.
Sure.
In the higher end of the vehicle, we may also try to offer something like an airbag or something.
Okay.
But that is obviously at a later stage, and will be in the highest version of the vehicle.
Okay. Now, one of the most important things in electric vehicles, and especially small ones, is range.
Right.
Right. And what's going to be the real life range? So would you like to kind of share with our viewers, because that's something which is kind of sitting in the back of the mind for everybody. And
right.
And with air conditioning, what's going to be the range in the Bombay-like city which we are in today?
Right. So typically, from what we have understood from consumers, what is the kind of everyday range that people expect, the kind of everyday use that they have. Largely, most people will have somewhere around 40 to 50 odd kilometers higher side in terms of everyday commute. Obviously, there will be aberrations, but largely this is what the number looks at. So our objective will be to try and give 2x or slightly higher than 2x of that range, so that even on days when maybe they are traveling slightly more, they are able to cover for all of those aberrations also. So that is typically the ballpark figure that we are looking at.
So a real life range of 80 to 100 kilometers, which is what my Duo.
No, so typically we would look at somewhere around 120 odd kilometers.
Real life.
With
AC on.
With AC on. That is the target that we have.
Right.
Obviously, every drive cycle, every change in terms of how somebody drives, fast acceleration, fast deceleration, continuous braking, and all that will obviously impact. But I'm saying on an average, that is the target that we have of about 120 odd kilometers on a single charge.
Right. Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about the battery. Because what kind of kilowatt hours, what kind of chemistry, because that's also, with a lot of safety related to the battery. So maybe viewers would like to know about that also.
Right. So the cells are going to be LFP, lithium iron phosphates. They are obviously better for the Indian weather condition. In terms of the capacity of the battery pack, we'll be looking at somewhere around 8 to 10 kilowatt hours, depending on the range options that we want to give.
What kind of life can you expect out of the battery? Is that something that you thought about right now?
So that is in fact one of the critical aspects that we feel will decide if a particular product will do well or not, because while electric vehicles have a low cost of operation, but if you have a battery pack which has to be replaced very soon, then it just ends up being more expensive, right?
Yes.
So from that perspective, our target is that we give decent enough warranty. While I cannot give a number right now, but we are working with partners who can give us a solid warranty on the battery packs, which will allow the consumer a certain sense of confidence before they actually buy the product.
So Kalpit, you have a fairly interesting design where it's a two-seater but a four-door. Right. So one would have expected that two doors are usually enough. So did you think about kind of deleting those two doors, and what kind of was the thinking going on?
So actually we tried multiple alternatives. We tried just the two doors at the front. We tried offset doors. We tried alternative doors. And we tried everything that was possible.
Okay.
But what we came about to conclude was that it just did not fit in well. It was not harmonious.
Right.
Somehow it just was something weird, and which is something that we did not want to do, right? It should not be weird. So we finally decided that let's go with the conventional thing, and also obviously with the two door and the option to get down on both the sides, obviously it helps the consumer, because all this while we have actually been dropping on the traffic side of the road. It's actually not the right thing to do, So I think with this option where you can drop down on both the sides of the road, you can actually drop down on the footpath side of the road, which is more safer. So I guess that is something that we decided finally.
Plus, and I can already imagine Top Gear being very happy about the fact that you don't need to have a separate model for Europe and separate model for UK.
That's absolutely a valid point. Yes.
Okay. Right. So a lot of people are obviously interested in two more things. Correct. Which is one, what kind of budgets, price-wise, are we looking at for the car? And if you answer that, I'm going to ask you the last question probably for the day. So can we have a rough indication of?
I would say that don't expect it to be too cheap, because it is not a cheap car. It is going to be slightly on the premium-ish side. See, the idea is to actually, so one of the things that we wanted to do was help increase the appeal of this concept of PMV, personal mobility vehicles. We have all seen SUV, sedan and hatchback and all that, right? We need this category called PMV. And if we make it something that is found wanting in terms of how it performs or in terms of how it looks and all of that, the consumer acceptance is going to be limited, right? So our objective was always that we have to provide a good quality and a appealing solution. Right. So which is what you see here, and which is what you will see in the subsequent communications also. So I mean, I know that you're trying to get the figure out of me, but what I can tell you is that it will be slightly premium-ish to the entry-level cars which are available right now in the market.
More than an Alto, definitely. Much more than what an Alto costs.
Not much more, I would say, but yes, some slightly premium-ish to like entry-level Alto. But then you also get some of the benefits which you typically not find in some of the entry-level vehicles. So I guess if somebody were to look at value for money, for sure they would get a decent value for money. So we are not going for the price per se, but rather value for money.
Sure.
And majority of the consumers who have either pre-ordered with us or who keep interacting with us day in day out, majority of them, if they are looking at this vehicle, it is very clear to them that this is not their first car, right? This is going to be a preferred second car in the household. Now for somebody who already has a car, they are already used to the niceties of a car. So if we give them a compromised product there, the acceptance again drops down. So that's not something that we can do. So for that reason, do expect that it will be slightly pricey, but it wouldn't be exorbitantly expensive the way that you see maybe currently where.
So definitely sub 10 lakhs.
100% of 10 lakhs. Yeah, 100% of 10 lakhs. It would be, affordable. It would surely be affordable is what we feel for a second car, not a first car.
So a very wide band would be 5 to 10 lakhs.
You could say 4 to 8 lakhs.
Oh, okay. So that's again better, right? So that's nice, and that's something that probably I would also like to kind of look at some point of time, because for me the biggest distraction is your, sitting one behind the other, because from an aerodynamic perspective, that's the best, right? So the thinner your form factor, the better it cuts. It's like a knife that is kind of cutting through, right? And one of the reasons why trains have got lower watt hours per kilometer compared to a line of trucks is because of the linearity, and that's what I think I've only seen in the PMV. Do check it out. Next thing, kab milega? When do we get it? What's the timeline?
The timeline that we are working with is going to be somewhere in the first half of next year.
Oh, lovely.
We are hoping that if it is possible, we will try to get it earlier. But surely in the first half of next year. Obviously, that is also a slightly longer range, to be fair. I mean, I as a consumer would feel that it's slightly longer range. But then, given that the kind of mammoth task that is there in building a vehicle, we wouldn't want to overcome it and then later on be found wanting. So yeah, that is the typical timeline that we are looking at the moment.
Kalpit, you got this PMV is the name of the company, and Easy is the particular name of the model. So what's easy about the car?
So Easy basically is an acronym. Easy stands for eco-friendly and sustainable electric. Okay, it's not just electric, it's eco-friendly and sustainable also. The idea of sustainability is less carbon emissions. The idea of sustainability is the way that I told you earlier, being stuck in traffic for about 60 minutes traveling 10 kilometers of distance. That's not sustainable. We got to address that. Trying to find a parking spot. Typically, we take anything between 5 to 15 minutes just to find a parking spot. Again, not sustainable. So what we are essentially trying to do is that while we go for the electrification of vehicles, we want to relook at the overall form factor of the vehicle and try and make it eco-friendly and sustainable electric. That's what Easy stands for. And Easy is basically the vehicle. So it's easy to drive, easy to park, easy on the environment, and easy on the pocket. So that's basically what Easy is all about.
You said that this is a second car.
Right.
Right. But for what kind of usage would you expect this second car to get used?
Right. So basically, when we started off, building the vehicle, we had a particular, usage for the vehicle for which we were building to, and there were 3 specific things that we were building to, and that happens to be say about 80 to 90 odd % of the use case of a personal car for majority of the people. And those three use cases were, office and back, grocery shopping, dropping kids to school. So these are the only 3 things that we are looking to address the consumer's needs for. We don't want to go to long distances. We don't want to take all of our family together and all of those things. So we are very clear and concise with
personal mobility.
Personal mobility, which is what the company's name is also, PMV, Personal Mobility Vehicles. And we basically say that our vehicles have to be faster, smarter, and greener. So when I say faster, obviously, with top speed of 70 kilometers per hour, you may not be able to, really fly through traffic. But surely the form factor of the vehicle will allow you to cut through the traffic, right?
Wherever
that is where it is faster.
Wherever you stuck in jams, that's where you find the spaces and kind of move around.
You can cut through traffic like a fighter jet plane, which is what I like to.
It's not a 747.
Right, it's not a 747.
Okay.
Faster in terms of parking, so smaller space you can find and you can actually park.
Right.
So that is what the faster stands for. Smarter is obviously, so the vehicle is not just small, it's smarter in terms of what all it can do. So we have some top of the line benefits.
You have cruise control, I believe.
We have cruise control. We have something called as remote park assist, where you can actually control the vehicle from outside the vehicle using your cell phone app.
Wow.
We have something called as easy mode. So typically people like to drive their cars, but the time when they don't like to drive their cars is when they're stuck in traffic, right? So there the constant clutch, brake and accelerator, clutch, brake and accelerator is something that we don't want to do. So what we have done is we have these buttons on the steering control where you can just press one button, the vehicle goes forward at top speed of 20 kmph. You press the minus button, the vehicle brakes.
Okay.
So that's called the easy mode.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm essentially trying to say
Pedal-less
is
driving.
yeah, you can say, so we call it the feet-free driving.
Sure.
In traffic particularly.
Correct.
So that is the smarter part of it, and obviously greener. So
What kind of watt hours per kilometer are you looking at without air conditioning?
So tentatively, I mean, all the data that we have currently, we are looking at somewhere around 50 to 60 odd.
Very good. Very good.
With our vehicle without the AC.
So just to give feedback, Ola on hyper mode gives you about 40 watt hours per kilometer, so it's about 20% more than an Ola on hyper, which is amazing.
And the last part, what I was referring to earlier, is the greener part. So like we anticipate that all electric vehicles are all green. That's actually not the case. There is some carbon emissions linked to how the battery pack size is, the kind of watt hours, like you mentioned, per kilometer that it consumes. So there is a carbon emission linked to that too.
Sure.
So in all of these aspects, our vehicle will be much greener compared to all the other electric vehicles also, let alone the petrol and diesel variants. Obviously, it's greener than that. But even the electric vehicles, compared to the regular sized vehicles, this works out better. And last one point that I want to make is that typically most electric vehicle users at the moment here in India are people who are using the electric cars as a second car.
Yes.
As of now, that is the way that
Probably
it
the
is.
exceptions are the Nexon owners, for whom probably it is the first car.
They would still probably not actually buy that as the first car. They would still buy that as a second car. So our idea is very simple, that when you know that you're going to buy a vehicle which is going to be limited to intracity, then and in the intracity applications you typically have single or double occupancy, like how you mentioned earlier that it's going to be a single occupancy vehicle. So in that sense, what makes sense is to actually buy a right size mobility.
Absolutely.
And that is the idea, or that is the vision which we have for the for the company. I mean, axe also cuts, a blade also cuts, but we don't ever, use an axe to shave, right? I mean, taking an SUV out to travel about 15-20 kilometers and go to your office as a single occupant vehicle, I think is a bit of an overkill, right?
Absolutely.
So that's something that we want to change in terms of how the consumer perceives the occupancy of the road. The car is mine, the road belongs to everybody.
Right. Although having touched upon the topic of the SUV, your styling is a little bit like an SUV, which make you worry about the coefficient of drag. Of course, the area is less, so that kind of helps. But maybe that's something we'll discuss in another.
So the design intent, what you mentioned earlier, is exactly what we have built to. I mean, Indian consumers or consumers in general like slightly beefed up vehicles. So we have built to that. Obviously, keeping in mind, it's an attractive design.
Absolutely.
So obviously, we had to keep that in mind while we made the product. And surely, what you mentioned earlier in terms of coefficient on track. So what you said is right, that maybe slightly taller vehicle may have slightly higher coefficient of drag. But the thing is that the vehicle is going to be largely a low-speed vehicle within the city application. So there, the coefficient of drag may not come into the picture as much as maybe it would say at 100 kilometers.
Just giving you a little bit of physics over here. The drag force is proportional to this coefficient of drag, projected area, and the square of your speed. So at 60 kmph, you are multiplying the drag for everything else remaining the same. So if your average vehicle is like 40-50 kmph, the impact is much less. Right, but if you're driving it at 100 kmph, you're gone. So in that sense, you don't have to worry too much about it. Although one of the things that worries me a little bit is the suspension, and the only way to find an answer to that is to actually get in and drive. So Kalpit ji, I am looking forward to your on-road vehicle, and I hope you are able to get it across to us to Pune for a week-long drive, and that would be really interesting, guys. So I am really waiting for 2023 when Kalpit has promised us a car, and we would love to give you a kind of detailed review about how it's handling. And I think after that, I don't know about anybody else, but my advance is waiting for you, Kalpit. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much.